Welcome to the Relationship Recovery Podcast, hosted by Jessica Knight, a certified life coach who specializes in narcissistic and emotional abuse. This podcast is intended to help you identify manipulative and abusive behavior, set boundaries with yourself and others, and heal the relationship with yourself so you can learn to love in a healthy way.
Hello and welcome back, and thank you as always for being here. I wanted to start out with a few quick reminders before we dive in today to a topic that I've actually been thinking about a lot recently. And so just a few house cleaning things. I am so grateful that people find this podcast and that it is helpful and it is healing and it is opening up neural pathways for you that you're able to understand your relationships better and really validate for yourself that you're not crazy. It's not you. And I am so honored that people reach out and they want to book clarity calls, but I just want to be very clear because I'm very respectful of my clients' time. And I just think it's important because I do have an offering if you just want a one-off, but the clarity call is meant to be a call between us to see if we are meant to work together, if we should work together. I try and learn as much as I can about what you're going through. Obviously, I totally understand that there's a lot of things that we won't talk about in a quick half an hour, but that's what that call is for. It's what's going on, can I help? And let's go over logistics and what this looks like. A validation call, on the other hand, is I just need a one-off with you and I want to dive in. And I say this often when I bring this up on podcasts. It's like, if you don't see a time that works for you, just email me. I do have times available, but just sort of to piggyback off that same comment, I care very much about the reoccurring clients that I have now. And like, obviously they are going through a lot as well. And so I try to preserve some time just in case there's reschedules and things like that. But that also means I have some availability in between. I also do take those on the weekend when I don't have my daughter. And so you can always email me and ask, jessica@jessicaknightcoaching.com. And I'd be happy to find a time. And if you're curious about like which option is best, you can also email me about that. I am here to help. But I definitely have been getting a few clarity calls that are either no-shows, which just sort of pushes back appointment times for people that really want the help, or it's used as a free call, which there's a lot of free content here. I really commit to continuing to deliver this podcast, but there's other options if that doesn't work, but you can always reach out. Additionally, my emotional abuse recovery course is available on my website, emotionalabusecoach.com. And that is the first step to beginning to separate from an emotionally abusive person. Okay, the topic. I'm so bad at logistics, guys. But really important that I get that out there because I want to be able to serve as many people and in the best way that I can. Today's topic is a topic that has been coming up in my life, but it's also been coming up in the lives of my clients, which is usually pretty aligned. And I was down a Reddit rabbit hole, and it reminded me of something that I learned many years ago called the teddy bear effect. And so we often wonder how the other person could possibly see us the way they do or accept us in a certain way or have expectations for us. And when we are with a controlling person, nothing makes sense. But their expectations of us are at the top of that list of things that don't make sense. And sometimes this puts us in a real spiral because we start to wonder, is it me? Is it them? We might vent to somebody and they might say, oh, my husband does that, or my boyfriend does that. Or we might second guess ourselves, Google behaviors, bring this to therapy, feel like it's us. And I don't want you to have to do that. And I think that a lot of times, we wonder if it is us because you are an empathetic, compassionate person. And likely if you're hurting someone and they're telling you that, you're going to want to look at your behavior. But a lot of times when we're with a controlling person, it's not us. And it's our reaction to the control, which is reactive abuse. And often we wonder how they could possibly see us the way they do. And when we are with a controlling person, nothing makes sense. The expectations that they have of us are often very unrealistic and driven by control. but they don't seem that way a lot of the time. They want us to be a certain way so their life is easier, so that they don't feel shame, so that they aren't blamed, which is actually holding them accountable. And often this is so unrealistic that there is no option but to comply in some way, because they're often so convincing that you often feel and think that you're supposed to meet their needs, even if it's not really rational. And one thing that helped me in my healing was to begin to see this through Patricia Evans' analogy. It's called the Teddy check. Now, Patricia Evans is an amazing resource. She's not spoken about that much, but she should be. She wrote the book Verbally Abusive Relationship, and it is very good. And this Teddy check comes from her book, Controlling People. I will post links to both of those in the show notes. What is the Teddy check, though? It essentially means your partner treats you as if you're supposed to be a teddy bear. I'm just going to let that land for a second. This perspective is based on how a child relates to a stuffed animal. In a way, the toxic person or manipulator or abuser tries to create a pretend relationship. Let's first look at the qualities. The teddy bear is an inanimate object and therefore compliant. A child plugs their thoughts and perceptions into the teddy bear, making it do and say what it wants. The teddy is always comforting. The child talks to Teddy and responds to Teddy as Teddy. Teddy is always appreciative, kind, and doesn't mind if you've been sitting around for a while. Teddy agrees with you. And in this theory, we can see that Teddy also would do things for you and thinks about you before you ask. And this is because the teddy bear is based on pretend play. My daughter thinks that her stuffed animals are her friends, and they have thoughts and they have feelings and they have fights and they have responses. But no matter what, at the end of the day, she goes to bed and all her stuffies are in the bed and everybody is tucked in. Everyone's happy because it's her reality. And this is what the abuser or controlling person is playing. They are playing pretend here with us. They are trying to plug their person into this pretend version. And if we follow this narrative, when the non-abusive or authentic person speaks up, the adult may think something like, sometimes Teddy talks about stuff, but it doesn't have anything to do with you, so just nod and agree, no matter what the tone is. And the same goes and vice versa. You're supposed to just nod and agree. So when we talk, when we express things, they don't take us seriously. When it's the other way, they just nod. They act agreeable or not. Teddy doesn't get upset with you. Imagine if it did. Say Teddy was upset by something, right? How could that be? The abuser would then deliver their usual response, mixed with diverting and countering. That would silence Teddy. Teddy would likely stay silent for a few days and everything would go back to normal. And he probably would just look at Teddy and say, well, Teddy is malfunctioning, right? That's the excuse. Well, it must have been a defect. And now we move on. And this works for the manipulator because we learn from the love bombing stage that they don't see us as us. They don't see us as a person. And we don't see them either. We see the absolute best in them. We believe that that is them. And during this time, they not only see an irrational version of us, but we see a pretend version of them too. And they are attracted to us insofar as we maintain their false reality. This is something that I had to learn and ingrain in my bones because I was in so many relationships that would get to a point that I'd be like, that's not me. What are you doing? What are you saying? It's because they have a version of us that they've created, which creates a false reality. And the problem is that this isn't grounded in reality. They do not accept the ways in which they are not the dream man or woman and the ways in which that we are full people with thoughts, feelings, emotions, jobs, kids, injuries, ailments, whatever. They hold us to standards that we don't even understand because we never probably agreed to it. We probably never said like, oh yeah, no, you're right. I am happy all the time. Or, you know what? There are literally no problems in my life. I always want to look my best. Like the standards they have for us usually are so unrealistic we clearly didn't create them. And I've had people in my life tell me, you don't know how to live a stress-free life, in which I responded, aren't you a single parent too? Or that we should be able to talk whenever they want. That's one from a client actually. And when they take away our ability to sleep, to process, to breathe, because they need to talk when they want, that's abuse. It's not stonewalling to say, I need a break from this conversation. I need to go to sleep. Let's find a time. It is abuse to say the time is now and you are not going to sleep until I feel better. Here's an example how somebody might pull that teddy check on you. And again, the teddy check is really to make sure that you are still the version that they want you to be. Taking into account the cycle of abuse, we know that after there's an incident, it usually returns to the calm stage. So the controller now checks up on the victim to make sure things are status quo. Even though it's late at night, the authentic person is asleep, the controller gets out or sets out to tell Teddy about a meeting that they had. Maybe they just got home and they're like, I'm going to go tell Teddy about the meeting. Now, you may think there's something wrong, right? There's an insistence to talk. And in this example, the abuser wakes up the person to talk. He says he just wanted to connect. He missed her. There's no regard for the fact that she was asleep. And again, we need to think about this in the concept of control and abuse. This isn't somebody went to work, they're coming home. I really missed you so much today. Even that, because that person would probably set the coffee machine to make coffee when that person woke up, wrote a note and left a flower and said, I really missed you. And then cuddled up next to them in the bed, right? A controlling person wants what they want when they want it. And so goes in, wakes her up, no regard for the fact that she's sleeping. Again, abusive relationship. So she likely was asleep, didn't want to be woken up, or else she would have been awake still. No regard that they have that she had a day too. And the manipulator just wanted Teddy time. Wanted time to vent, to talk, to get their needs met. And if you've ever been treated this way, you know that you don't feel like you have agency in your choice. And if you haven't been treated this way, you're likely listening to the wrong podcast, because seriously, if you have never been treated this way, it may be hard to understand why somebody would act out this way or even see a problem with this. But we need to see that it's disregarding the human needs of someone else. That's what the teddy check does. It disregards our needs, because all they want is a teddy bear to love them, that will listen to them, and that responds to them. Give and take is usually not an occurrence in an abusive relationship. They are one-sided. So the expectations go one way. And what would happen if you just wanted to talk or explode or vent? What happens when you have feelings? If we go back to where we started, Teddy's not allowed to have feelings. The abuser makes up what the Teddy's feelings are. A teddy bear doesn't require reconciliation. It just requires time. It's one way. They don't see you as a living, breathing, separate person. They see you as an extension of themselves. They feel threatened when you don't show up as expected. And they often project their feelings onto you because they don't see you as real. Which is half the time when they speak to you, you're wondering what the fuck is coming out of their mouth. Because it's likely things you've said to them. I need space. I need to breathe. Can you give me some time? I would really appreciate if you didn't text me constantly while I was out with my friend. I need a night at home, whatever that is. One reason they do this, outside of power and control, which is clear, is that these qualities fill the void that they have within them. So when you aren't the person that they made up, they don't know what to do with that. They see it as a personal attack. And this is why as victims, we often find ourselves thinking, believing, and saying, you don't want me, or you don't seem to like me, because they don't see you. And quite frankly, they don't like the real you. They like the version of you that they created that is unrealistic to the circumstances. We all can work on ourselves, right? There's always stuff that we can look at. That doesn't mean to change our inner personality. Think about this. Someone who loves you doesn't completely disregard your emotions, safety, or mental health. They don't discard you and they don't disregard how you feel. An abuser, a controller, has a well-crafted idea of who you are in their head. And when you deviate from that, they become angry and abusive. They want you, but not the actual you. And I think this concept is important because we need the language to understand our reality. Not having words to express what's going on is really isolating. And I believe that's what leads to crazy making. And this is why narcissistic, controlling, abusive behavior is so hard to understand, because it turns it back on us. Everything it's like their rubber, we're glue. It just bounces off of them and sticks onto us. That's exactly what it's like. But if you're feeling like you are in this relationship and the expectations are through the roof and there's never any accountability, there's never any understanding, it's like, yeah, because they don't want that. They just want to dump on us, respond for us, feel for us, and then move on from us. And it is so fucking painful. But I hope that this podcast gave you some clarity on one concept of something that could be going on in your relationship. And I highly recommend any of the work by Patricia Evans, but specifically the book Controlling People. I think it will help a lot of people. The links will be in the show notes. And if you have questions on this topic or want me to expand further, please always feel free to reach out. You can email me at jessica@jessicaknightcoaching.com. You can find me on Instagram at emotional abuse coach, and you can find me at emotionalabusecoach.com.